Fu Xinxing carried He Yan out and instructed his subordinates to attend to the man. In the car, He Yan remained unconscious as Fu Xinxing whispered, "He Yan, let's go home now. I owe you, and I'll repay you little by little, just wait." Rather than heading to the hospital, they went directly back to the apartment. Dr. Wan arrived promptly, accompanied by a female doctor. Upon seeing He Yan in bed, the female doctor motioned for Dr. Wan and Fu Xinxing to wait outside. Outside, Fu Xinxing sat on the sofa and lit a cigarette. He struggled to take a puff, which led to a fit of coughing, tears streaming down his face. As time passed, the first light of day began to filter in. The bedroom door opened gently, and Dr. Wan's younger sister emerged. The female doctor spoke softly to Fu Xinxing, "The patient's injuries have been temporarily treated, and her mood is quite stable." She paused and furrowed her brow, adding, "However, the patient requested a sedative and said she wanted to sleep." After a prolonged silence, Fu Xinxing inquired, "Is she asleep?" The female doctor replied, "She just fell asleep." Although the patient appears calm, I find this change somewhat concerning. It might be best to consult a psychologist for psychological intervention. Fu Xinxing entered the bedroom to find He Yan asleep. Her pale face exuded an air of serenity, and he struggled to contain his tears, though his reddened eyes betrayed his emotions. He Yan's words echoed in his mind, "Are you satisfied?" "I'm sorry, it was a year and a half late for you to see this." Each word pierced his heart. He was the one who had led her to this terrible ordeal. When He Yan awoke, the female doctor asked in a warm tone, "How are you feeling?" He Yan did not respond immediately. Instead, her gaze shifted around the room. The astute female doctor sensed He Yan's unease and refrained from leaving. He Yan noticed the doctor's concern and offered a faint smile. "You don't need to worry. I'll recover soon." People have a way of persevering through life. Regardless of what happens, we must keep on living. As He Yan calmly ate her food and sipped wine, she maintained a facade of composure. Meanwhile, Fu Xinxing addressed the long-overdue responsibilities he should have taken years ago. Upon hearing the news, Master Fu was furious, nearly suffering a heart attack. He reprimanded Fu Xinxing angrily, "There are countless ways to deal with the dead, and you had to choose the most foolish one. The very next night, you went out to kill, as if you wanted the world to know. Are you that desperate to exact revenge for a woman?" He added, "Is it worth it? If it were for your grandfather, I'd understand. But are you so filled with hatred towards me that you can take such delight in seeking revenge?" Fu Xinxing replied slowly, "Grandfather, you wouldn't have fit Zhang's preferences anyway." Hearing this, Master Fu sighed weakly. "I won't argue with you anymore. I have one question. The Zhang clan has never suffered a loss of life. What's your plan now?" Fu Xinxing's tone remained indifferent as he flashed a cruel smile. "I intend to obliterate the Zhang family completely." Later that night, He Yan came across the news of Zhang's family destruction on her phone. She remained stunned for a while until Fu Xinxing entered her room and asked, "Are you feeling better?" Yan ignored his question and inquired, "Did you kill him?" Fu Xinxing sneered, "Yes, with my own hands and 2 loads of ammo." He Yan fell silent for a moment upon hearing this revelation. Fu Xinxing eventually broke the silence, assuring her, "Don't worry, I have an alibi, and the police won't be able to implicate me." He Yan mumbled to herself, "Even if the police can't touch you, the Zhang family won't let this slide." Fu Xinxing got up and told her, "Go to sleep early, I won't bother you anymore." Some time later, He Yan knocked on the door of Fu Xinxing's study. He was surprised to see her but also pleased. "Yan." Yan lowered her gaze and softly said, "I can't sleep, and I don't want to take sleeping pills anymore. Can I borrow a book to read?" Fu Xinxing gestured toward the bookshelf wall, saying, "Pick one yourself. I don't really care about these books. They're just for show." Without responding, she approached the bookshelf, carefully examining the titles. Fu Xinxing leaned on the edge of the table, quietly observing her from behind. He remembered all too well the terrible things he had done to her and the hurtful words he had spoken. In the past, he didn't care because he didn't love her, but now, the memory of those actions weighed heavily on his conscience. Yan stood before the bookshelf for a while before selecting a thick dictionary. She cradled it in her arms and turned to face him, saying, "I'll take this one. You might fall asleep just by looking at it." Fu Xinxing's smile faltered as he asked, "Why did you choose this book?" He Yan glanced at the dictionary in her arms and replied softly, "It's easy to doze off when reciting it, and I left some unresolved school problems." He chuckled, "I'll give it a try later." Without further words, she left with the book in her arms, and he followed her to see her off. When they reached the door, he couldn't restrain himself any longer. "Yan," he called softly, approaching her from behind. After a long pause, he spoke in a strained voice, I'm sorry. Please forget about those things, okay? He Yan responded gently, Fu Xinqing, let's both look forward. That night, he returned to his bedroom to sleep with her. As he reached out to touch her, she unconsciously recoiled, retreating to the other side of the bed. After a prolonged silence, he whispered, rest assured, I won't touch you. She curled into a ball and slept with her back to him. In the middle of the night, she suddenly clung to him, burying her face in his chest. But her words were filled with fear, Yuanza, I'm afraid. He keeps coming after me. Fu Xinqing patted her back gently, offering reassurance, it's okay, it's okay. Gradually, she woke from her nightmare, letting go of him and withdrawing from his embrace. In a low voice, she said, thank you. As He Yan retched in the bathroom later on, Fu Xinqing reached out to comfort her, but she recoiled, refusing his touch. Frustrated by her behavior, he asked, what more do you want? I killed Zhang, destroyed his family, stomped on you, and wrecked your life. What else do you want? Are you planning to seek revenge? I'll allow it, so you can finally find some balance. Fu Xinqing shouted, Ah Jiang, come here. When Ah Jiang arrived, Fu Xinqing grabbed his collar and exclaimed, all right, show her. Ah Jiang was bewildered by Fu Xinqing's words. Fu Xinqing turned to Yan and, in a cruel tone, addressed Ah Jiang, go outside and find someone, the rougher and dirtier, the better. Ah Jiang was flustered and looked back at He Yan for guidance. When Ah Jiang didn't immediately comply, Fu Xinqing took matters into his own hands and headed toward the door, ready to find someone himself. However, Ah Jiang implored He Yan to stop Fu Xinqing and persuade him. With a cold expression, He Yan said, Shenji yeah, I truly did my best. Hearing this, Fu Xinqing fell silent for a while. Once everything had settled down, Ah Jiang suggested, I see that Miss Yan doesn't want to live a good life with you. She's just trapped here. It might be better to let her leave first. In 2 or 3 years, the wounds might heal, and maybe we can forget. If you go after her now, you might not be able to reconcile. Reason told Fu Xinqing that Ah Jiang was right, but he couldn't bring himself to let go. He wouldn't allow her to be happy with someone else, even if it meant watching her wither away in his grasp. Fu Xinqing gradually calmed down from his anger, stood up, and said softly, He Yan, I won't let you leave. Even if it means you'll die in my arms. Her expression remained calm as she replied, good. A few days later, Tian unexpectedly called He Yan and hesitated to ask her, is what they're saying true? He Yan chuckled and asked, what did they say? Tian, equally astute, responded, do you want to go shopping together? He Yan was taken aback by the sudden invitation and replied, no, I've been feeling a bit lazy lately. I don't really feel like going anywhere. Tian continued, we can't turn back time, can we? He Yan couldn't help but laugh, Tian, I stole your fiancé. Tian retorted, I don't want that idiotic man, but I don't want to end our friendship either. In front of men, friendship is much more valuable. He Yan, since we've taken different paths, let's settle all the old debts. The thousands of dollars I lent you in the past, you can repay me. Moreover, find and return the photos you took of me back in school. Tian's words seemed to carry more than just a request for repayment, and He Yan felt a sense of suspicion. Still, she agreed, all right, I'll return everything. When He Yan returned to her old apartment, she began to search through her high school photo albums, looking for pictures of Tian one by one. As she turned the pages, a smile gradually crept onto her face. The room darkened as she continued her search, and the faces in the photos became increasingly indistinct. She reached out to turn on the bedside lamp. However, when the light flickered to life, her gaze unintentionally shifted to the window. There, she was stunned by what she saw, a porcelain doll, no larger than her palm. It was the very porcelain doll she had carefully placed in her mother's suitcase before fleeing, intending to give it to Liang Yuanza. He Yan's hands trembled violently as she picked up the porcelain doll and examined it closely. When she noticed the tiny black mark above its eyebrow, tears welled up in her eyes. Liang Yuanza was still here, he hadn't truly left. He had been right beside her all along. Ah Jiang had been unable to hear any movement from He Yan for quite some time, growing increasingly concerned. He called out, Miss Yan, are you alright? She didn't wish to conceal what couldn't be hidden. She chuckled and replied, I'm fine. I was just looking at old photos and got a bit emotional. Then, she looked at Ah Jiang and added, don't tell Fu Xinqing, so we don't have to stir up trouble again. Ah Jiang hesitated for a moment before nodding in agreement. The porcelain doll remained on the bedside table, untouched. Now, He Yan desperately wanted to call Tian, asking her what was going on, whether Liang Yuanze had secretly contacted her, what they had discussed, and where he was now. But she couldn't make that phone call. She couldn't arouse Fu Xinqing's suspicion, as it could spell doom for both Liang Yuanze and Tian. When Fu Xinqing returned home that evening, he found He Yan sitting on the sofa, cutting photos. He couldn't help but ask, "Why are you cutting them?" He Yan paused briefly and replied softly, "Because we've broken up, and we should separate everything clearly." Fu Xinqing noticed that He Yan had cut her own arm in one of the photos and asked, "Why did you cut your own arm?" He Yan wore a helpless expression as she explained, Tian has a strong personality. She'll be upset if I cut her photo." Fu Xinqing gently questioned, "Since we're breaking up, why bother about whether she gets upset or not?" He Yan said in a daze, "You're right, I can't argue with that." Suddenly, Fu Xinqing commented, "You look much better than Tian. He Yan thanked him, but she kept her focus on cutting photos. Fu Xinqing felt an odd impulse, and while He Yan was momentarily distracted, he covertly took one of her most charming photos, hiding it in his palm before discreetly slipping it into the inner pocket of his suit. He Yan hesitated for a moment and then asked, "Could you lend me some money? I still owe Tian some money, and she's asking me to repay her. My savings are depleted, and I won't have enough on hand for a while." Fu Xinqing humorously replied, "If you give me a kiss, I'll lend it to you." Annoyed, He Yan retorted, "Are you like a child wanting candy?" The next day, He Yan arranged to meet Tian at a bustling square, at an open-air coffee stand. Tian, who knew Jiang, pointed him out to He Yan and warned, "Tell this man to stay away from us. Every time I see him, I'm reminded of his master's vile deeds, and it upsets me." After moving to a table far away from Jiang, Tian asked, "What about the photos? Give them to me." He Yan took out the photos from her bag and handed them over. She couldn't help but press them to her chest. In a low voice, she asked, "What's going on?" Tian glanced up at He Yan but continued to look at the photos, answering in a hushed, rushed tone, "I should be asking you the same question." "He Yan, tell me what's happening here. Do you know how Liang Yuanze contacted me? He even found Wang Jun from our class." "Wang Jun, the one who had a crush on me. Liang Yuanze sent me a letter through Wang Jun's mailbox." He Yan didn't care to address Tian's inquiries. Instead, she anxiously asked, "Where is he now? Is he in Nanzhou?" "No, he's still in the West," Tian replied tersely. "He sent the porcelain doll to me through intermediaries. Along the way, it changed hands several times, and there was a message for you." "What did the message say?" He Yan couldn't wait to hear. Tian answered, "Be patient, he will return." He Yan couldn't hide her anxiety. She had last seen Liang Yuanze in the West, running with Dr. Luo and his assistant, Casey. They appeared like a couple in love. If he didn't have the amnesia created by Fu Xinqing, why would he pretend to have forgotten her completely? Why had he remained in the West, working with the plastic surgeon? Was he still searching for evidence that Fu Xinqing was Shinjijie? He Yan bit her lip unconsciously and said to Tian, "You should inform him immediately and ask him to leave there. It's very dangerous." Tian threw the photos on the table and said angrily, "I can't reach him. He left no contact information whatsoever. What's going on? What are you hiding from me?" He Yan took a deep breath and whispered, "We're not hiding anything from you, it's just too dangerous for you to know. With someone like Fu Xinqing, the farther you stay away from him, the better." Tian wasn't impulsive, she could tell there was more to He Yan's words. But she didn't press further. Instead, she asked, "Zhang Shou's family, were they really killed by him? Did Zhang Shou threaten you?" He Yan pursed her lips but didn't answer directly. She simply said, "It wasn't a big deal, he just hit me." Tian had heard rumors suggesting that Zhang Shou's obsession with Fu Xinqing had angered him. Thinking back to the night when Fu Xinqing had frantically searched for He Yan, Tian suspected that He Yan might have had something to do with it. "He should be dead," Tian exclaimed angrily. In that case, Fu Xinqing's despicable actions weren't entirely in vain. He Yan didn't respond to Tian's remark and kept silent. Finally, He Yan suppressed her thoughts and asked Tian softly, "Can I send an email to Wang Jun's mailbox?" Tian shook her head and replied, "Liang Yuanze said he wouldn't respond to my letters. Moreover, the email he sent me contained a virus that automatically deleted itself after I read it. I suspect that his mailbox may have been compromised. I don't think he'll check it again." He Yan simply said, "Oh." Tian continued, "Since he told you to wait patiently, just wait. Don't worry, if he has any more news for me, I'll let you know immediately." He Yan nodded slightly and then remembered something. "Leave me your bank account number, and I'll transfer the money to you." Tian was stunned, left without any words, and finally said, okay, don't cause any trouble. I'm afraid you don't quite understand what I'm suggesting, but I've already secured the money. Since you've brought it up, you might as well take it. That way, the man won't grow suspicious, Yen said, pulling out paper and a pen from her bag and handing them to Tian. Write down your account number for me, and I'll transfer the money to you. Tian, seeing Yan's determination, reluctantly agreed and jotted down her account number. She couldn't help but ask in a hushed tone, are you still planning to escape? Escape? No, this time, I'm going to dismantle the Fu family, Yen replied with determination. Seeing Yan's resolve, Tian decided not to press any further on the matter. Tian stood up first and said, thankfully, we're not talking about breaking up, or I'd have to pour a cup of water on you, which I really can't do. She smiled at Yen, then picked up her bag and left happily. Yen remained sitting at the table, alone. She had no intention of leaving. Suddenly, she received a call from an unknown number. She picked up and said, hello. Chenhegua replied, Miss Yen, I'm Chenhegua. Could you lend me some money? Yen asked, how much? But when Chenhegua saw a man in a black t-shirt, she immediately ended the call and fled the scene. Meanwhile, Fu Xinqing was talking to the same man, instructing him, find Chenhegua as soon as possible. After hanging up the call, he headed towards the cafe, where he saw Yen sitting alone, drinking coffee. He thought she hadn't noticed him, but she had, though she pretended otherwise. A little while later, Fu Xinqing received a call, and when he saw that it was from Yen, he answered it. Yen immediately asked, what are you doing there? When Yen came out, she asked Fu Xinqing, when did you arrive? Fu Xinqing replied, I just got here. Come on then, join me for a moment, Yen said softly. Fu Xinqing was surprised but still joined her for a meal. Fu Xinqing couldn't help but ask her, how did your conversation with Tian go? Yen raised her eyebrows and said, not bad. She got so angry she might have thrown water on me, but since she hadn't ordered anything yet, she just left the photos where she was. Fu Xinqing took a deep look at her and said, I'm sorry. They fell into silence for a long moment. But Yen broke the silence, saying, Fu Xinqing, can you give me a position? Fu Xinqing didn't immediately respond and just looked at her. Yen smiled and said, a normal job would do. It shouldn't be difficult for the president of the company to arrange. Fu Xinqing shrugged, you can do whatever you want. Yen replied, thank you. Since that awful day, this has been the most comfortable breeze I've felt. Fu Xinqing asked Yen, do you think I'll get a chance to make it up to you? Yen replied, one day, I will have to give up the past. Suddenly, Yen turned back and said, let's go home, the sun is gone. The next morning, Fu Sui was shocked to see Yen in the office. Fu Xinqing looked at him and said, what, aren't you going to say hello? Fu Sui bowed and said, hello, sister-in-law. Fu Xinqing appreciated the gesture and said, how clever. Now go and make some arrangements for Yen. With that, he said goodbye to Yen and walked away. Yen looked at Fu Sui with a big smile on her face, but Fu Sui didn't seem happy and asked, what do you want? Yen smiled sarcastically, don't be so suspicious. I was just bored sitting at home, so I wanted to work. Fu Sui got angry and banged his hand on the table, saying, damn it, don't think I don't know. Don't you want to destroy our brotherhood? Shenji Jia is a wretch, but as long as he remains a Fu, he will be my older brother. Yen sneered, brother. Have you ever thought that eventually, the Fu family might fall? Fu Sui grinned, the Fu family is a tree with deep roots. Do you think it's a playground? Yen chuckled, but its roots are rotten. It might be better to uproot them. Fu Sui approached Fu Xinqing in the lobby and said, hey, Fu Xinqing, what the hell are you doing? You know that she wants to kill all the fuss, and you along with us. Fu Xinqing chuckled, Yen is my favorite. If she's happy, I will be happy. Fu Sui shouted angrily, if you pamper her like that, the Fu family will fall into her hands. Hearing this, Fu Xinqing stopped and said, the Fu family will not be destroyed unless it's the day I die, and when I die, all of you will be destroyed with me. With that, he walked away, leaving Fu Sui frustrated.